Hello, hello, hola, hola, it's Hola Nature.
Hola amigos, bienvenidos a todos. Welcome everyone to the Hola Nature podcast. I am your nature-loving, Spanish-speaking, owl-admiring host, Naomi, and I'm super excited to read you a story today. Every so often, I will have some bonus episodes where I will share a story with two versions available. You are on the Bilingual Storytime episode, which means that I will be reading you a story in English with some Spanish mixed in. But don't worry, there is also a full Spanish version of this story if you'd like to listen to that as well. Just look for the next episode, which will be a full Spanish version. This story is all about búhos, just like episode 4 of this podcast. And if you haven't listened to that yet, definitely check it out after this. Also, make sure you go to the podcast page of my website, niñosandnature.com, and you can get some super cool Spanish learning freebies to keep your Spanish learning going all week long. Without further ado, here is Owl Moon. Owl Moon by Jane Yolen, illustrated by John Schoner. It was late one winter night, long past my bedtime, when Papa and I went owling. There was no wind, the árboles stood still as giant statues, and the luna was so bright that the sky seemed to shine. Somewhere behind us, a train whistle blew, long and low, like a sad, sad song. I could hear it through the gorro de lana that Pa had pulled down over my ears. A farm dog answered el tren, and then a second perro joined in. They sang out trenes y perros for a real long time, and when their voices faded away, it was as quiet as a dream. We walked on toward el bosque, Papa and I. Our feet crunched over the crisp snow, and little gray footprints followed us. Papa made a long shadow, but mine was round and short. I had to run after him every now and then to keep up, and my short, round sombra bumped after me. But I never called out. If you go owling, you have to be silencioso. That's what Papa always said. I had been waiting to go owling with Pa for a long, long time. We reached the line of pine trees, black and pointy against the cielo, and Papa held up his hand. I stopped right where I was and waited. He looked up, as if searching the estrellas, as if reading a mapa up there. The moon made his face into a silver mask, and then he called, "Woo, woo, 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 woo," the sound of a great horned búho. Woo, 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 woo. Again he called out, y luego otra vez. After each call, he was silent, and for a moment we both listened, but there was no answer. Pa shrugged, and I shrugged. I was not disappointed. Mis hermanos all said que a veces se ve un búho, and sometimes you don't. We walked on. I could feel the frío, como si una mano helada was palm down on my back, and my nariz and the tops of my cheeks felt frío and hot at the same time, but I never said a word. If you go owling, you have to be quiet. Tienes que guardar silencio and make your own heat. We went into the bosque. Las sombras were the blackest things I had ever seen. They stained the white nieve. My mouth felt furry, for the scarf over it was wet and warm. I didn't ask what kinds of things hide behind black trees in the middle of the night. When you go owling, tienes que ser valiente. Then we came to a clearing in the dark woods. The moon was high above us. It seemed to fit exactly over the center of the clearing, y la nieve era más blanca than the milk in a cereal bowl. I sighed, and Pa held up his mano at the sound. I put my mittens over the scarf, over my mouth, and listened hard. Then Papa called out, "Woo, woo, 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 woo." I listened and looked so hard that my orejas hurt and my ojos got cloudy with the cold. Papa raised his face to call out again, but before he could open his mouth, an echo came threading its way through the árboles. Hoo, 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 hoo. Pa almost smiled, and then he called back, hoo, 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 just as if he and the búho were talking about supper or el bosque or la luna or el frío. I took my mitten off the scarf, off my mouth, and I almost smiled too. El ulular del búho came closer from high up in the árboles on the edge of the meadow. Nothing in el campo moved. All of a sudden, a búho shadow, part of the big tree shadow, lifted off and flew right over us. We watched silently with heat in our mouths, the heat of all those words we had not spoken. The shadow hooted again. Pa turned on his big flashlight and caught the búho just as it was landing en una rama. For 1 minuto, 3 minutos, maybe even 100 minutos, we stared at one another. Then the búho pumped its great alas and lifted off the branch como una sombra without a sound. It flew back into the bosque. "Time to go home," Papa said to me. I knew that I could talk. I could even laugh out loud, but I was a shadow as we walked home. When you go owling, you don't need words or warm or anything but hope. That's what Papa always says, the kind of hope that flies on silent wings under a shining luna de búho. Oh my goodness, I love that story so much. It always makes me think of the moment where I saw a búho, except it wasn't at nighttime and it was in the summer, so it was definitely not the same as this story, but it was incredible. Have you ever seen a búho before? If you have, maybe you can write me a message and tell me all about it because they are one of my favorite animals. Do you think that they are as magical as I do? I hope that you have loved listening to this story and challenge yourself if you haven't yet. Go on over and listen to the full Spanish version of this story and see if you can follow along just as well as you did here. And if you are listening to this podcast and you're thinking, man, oh man, I wish I could learn Spanish with Naomi all of the time, have no fear, my friends. I have Spanish courses for kids of all ages for the whole family. Head on over to my website, niñosennature.com, under Spanish courses. I mean it when I say this is one of my favorite parts of the week when we get to learn all about nature in Español together, and I cannot wait until next time when we get to say hola to nature.